Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to do an in-depth video about the N2 and pitch stop adjustment checks for the EC135 P2 and P2 pluses. There's a ton of information to review, and we're going to go through all of it in this video. First, I'll tell you in the beginning how to complete these checks, and then we'll go a little bit more in-depth look at it line by line in the maintenance manual. All right, it gets kind of complicated. Anyway, the check breaks down like this, okay? You check and adjust the N2 in a hover. Then you fly at 60 to 65 knots up to around 9,500 feet density altitude. And you check and adjust the N2 at altitude. Okay, at this point, you're going to do the pitch stop check. So you're going to have your pilot fly straight and level, 60 to 65 knots airspeed at 9,500 feet pressure altitude. Not the same as density altitude. All right, so have your pilot at this point pull the collective up slowly until it reaches the beginning of the collective stop. And then you're going to check to see what the torque is on both engines, and you're going to write that down and write down the OAT. Then you're going to look at the chart and see if it's within limits or if it needs to be adjusted. Of course, you're going to be doing that on the ground, right? All right, at this point, you go back to the ground, and if you adjusted the N2 at altitude, then check the hover N2 again and see if it's within limits. And that's pretty much it, right? Done. Easy, right? Yeah, well... There's dozens of notes and cautions that we got to go through, and the maintenance manual procedures are not very instructive at some points at all. So also, I've seen the collective stop adjusted to the top of the stop, not adjusted to when the collective shaft first makes contact with that stop, if you know what I'm talking about, okay? So for these reasons, we're going to be going through the maintenance manual pretty much line by line. In the end, I hope this will clear up how to do this inspection, since this is a 1,000-hour, 36-month requirement or sooner if you replace certain parts on the aircraft, all right? So we're going to go through all this stuff, tons of stuff. Okay, let's drill down into all of this. First thing you want to do, we're going to go into the maintenance manual for the EC135 Airbus. We're going to go to the MSM, and the MSM, the Master Servicing Manual. Click on 05 MSM. It opens up this next page, which is the MSM, obviously. So we're going to go to Periodical Inspections, which is 0524. Right at the top, it says... Periodical inspection, which is 1,000 flight hours or 36 months. Do the ground run and functional check flight according to this reference 05-60-00-6-1. It says after performing periodical inspection, and that's for all the aircraft. Okay, but it gets more complicated than that. But a side note of that, if you look right underneath that, it says do a ground run and functional check flight of this other chapter. EC135 autopilot system. We're supposed to be doing that every periodical. I don't remember doing that. Anyway, that's a side note. Let's continue with this. If you click the blue hyperlink for the functional check flight, it gives you a drop down. They pretty much want to know if you have a Pratt & Whitney engine or a turbo mecha engine. So we're clicking the link for the Pratt & Whitney. That brings us to the ground run and functional check flight for the EC135 Pratt & Whitney engines. But if you scroll down, it gives you some more options. It gives you 4 options, with the third one down, F3, which is Effectivity P2 and P2 Plus. And that's chapter 05-60-00-6-4. We'll click that hyperlink. Great, so that brings us actually to the ground run and functional check flight for the EC135 helicopter that we're working on with the P2. All right, so the second figure is the matrix, so we're going to look at that real fast. If you look on the left side and you go down pretty far, on the left it says pitch stop adjustment, N2 adjustment in a hover, and then N2 adjustment in or above 9,500 feet density altitude, but the reference is all the same reference for the AMM. If you look at the top for the reasons for doing these maintenance activities, the second one over is the functional check flight. And all those dots are lit up. So that includes everything in the functional check flight is all those dots. Well, what we just talked about, which is pitch stop adjustment and the N2 adjustment, that's all part of the functional check flight. So Airbus changed the MSM, the functional check flight, or the AMM, whatever. The functional check flight used to have this at the end of it, but they took it out and put it in a different chapter. So I think people are overlooking this, possibly. Anyway, let's just continue. So if we go to that chapter, 5-60-00-6-8, that is the set and adjustment of the N2 and pitch stop for EC135 P2 and P2 Plus, okay? Ground run and functional check flight. I'm going to be doing a lot of talking in this video. Sorry about that. There is also another chapter. It's 6-7. It's check. It's just to check the N2 and pitch stop. We'll go over that at the very end of this video. We're just going to go through 6-8 because we had to make adjustments to ours. All right. And pretty much we're going to read this thing line by line. So we're going to go over it and we don't miss any warnings or cautions. All right. Do all this in accordance with the flight manual. Obviously, you're going to have a pilot doing the flying, right? Okay. Next, adjust and check the N2 in a hover. Density altitude during adjustment must be below 4,000 feet. Okay, figure out where your density altitude is, all right? Calculation of density altitude, see figure 1, all right? Stabilized, hover flight, and ground effect, perform. Torque match, Q mat 1, 2 equals 0, plus or minus 0.2, check. That's on your status page, so it should just be matched. It says that like Q mat 1/2. All right, now you're gonna adjust it if you need to. The N2 RPM changes when the potentiometer is turned to the left or to the right. If the required N2 RPM is reached, turn the switch N2 adjust back to the neutral position. Okay, I don't know if it's a potentiometer. It's definitely not a rheostat, but it's a 3-position switch, left, right, center. Okay, if you need to increase it, I think you turn it clockwise. It just clicks. Click, hold it there for 3 seconds, then go back to neutral and wait. If you hold it there until it goes to where you need it to go, you'll probably get a warning light or FADEC something or other light, okay? So just do like 2 or 3 seconds and then wait. And go back to neutral and then wait for it to stabilize. You look at the system status page of the N2 for both engines, and you need to adjust it to 100.0% plus or minus 0.2% using the adjustment potentiometer. Okay, so now we have the N2 for engine 1 and 2 where it's supposed to be in a hover, if it wasn't previously, right? Next, we're going to go to adjust and check N2 in or above 9,500 feet density altitude. It also says only to be performed if the helicopter is operated above 4,500 feet density altitude. I don't know who doesn't, so we're doing this, okay? This note right here says perform the N2 check with the torque value from the pitch stop diagram. All right, so you're going to be doing this. What is it? AEO MCP, max continuous power. This note right here is important. It says, if due to weather conditions, the climb to a density altitude of 9,500 feet is not possible, like you're trying to do this check, but you can't get that high because of weather, then the helicopter can be operated temporarily with the N2 adjustment check below 5,000 feet density altitude. But then it says, as soon as the weather condition is clear, the following procedure is then to be performed as a final step. Like, look, just wait till you can do this check. I mean, this is an important check. And this caution right here is pretty important. It's in all caps. Do not exceed 104% N2. Okay, that's the limits. All right, now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of this. How to do it, okay? Climb at 60 to 65 knots at MCP AEO. Max continuous power, all engines operative, okay? And how do you do this? On the right side, perform from density altitude below 4,000 feet until 9,500 feet density altitude. What's that mean? That means once you're good at a hover, tell the pilot, go fly to 9,500 feet and watch your status screen, okay? And at around 4,000, probably around 4,500 feet density altitude, you're going to see the N2 increase. So watch the status screen because you can't see it on your triple tack because it's tiny amount, okay? So watch on the status screen. The N2 will go from whatever you just had it set at, 100.0, it'll start, but if look, it fluctuates. Even in a hover, it's going to fluctuate between 99.9 and 100.1, okay? So it's going to bounce around. So it's not super solid. And when you're flying up to altitude, it's going to keep changing. But you'll see once it starts increasing, they want you to write down what your pressure altitude is, okay? Your pressure altitude, you set your altimeter to 29902, and that's what your pressure altitude is, and then you could calculate your density altitude using your OAT. We'll go over that in a minute. Okay, back to the maintenance manual. So we're going to scroll down a little bit and see what we got going on here. Torque trim QMAT 1.2, okay? That's right here on the bottom of the system status page. And what's the limit? It's supposed to be 0.0 plus or minus 0.2. Well, right here, this one is 0.0. I know it's at the very bottom of this picture, sorry. The difference between torque indications during the climb out. So torque is on your VEMD on your fly page, okay? Monitor between 4,000 and 9,500 feet. Record the maximum value. I don't think your torque's right there on your fly page. They're the same. They might, I've never really seen that be a problem. So next, back to the manual. So you're flying now up to 9,500 feet. Between 9,200 feet, 9,800 feet density altitude is where they want you to go. So you're flying. You're still flying max power, 60 to 65 knots. Nothing crazy. Flying up with max power. And the N2 will stop increasing at some point. So you're going to watch the status page. And when it seems like it stops going up, well, then you might go back down. Might go back down so you can go back up again. Because you may fly up 500 feet, maybe 800 feet, maybe 1,000 feet, and it may have changed 0.1, but that's just like fluctuations. I know I'm rambling, but the point is fly up to 9,500 feet altitude, watch for the N2 to increase at some point. Once it stops increasing, they want you to record the pressure altitude in the OAT. Just write it down on this page. It seemed like it stopped increasing. What do we have there? 103.2. Okay, good. Let's go to our chart. Pressure altitude chart. We get our OAT, which is 30.6 Fahrenheit, and that is negative 1 degree Celsius. We're going to plot it on 0, so we're a little bit off anyway. So you go from 0, draw a line straight up to what the curve is here. The curve is your pressure altitude. Our pressure altitude was just over 9,000, which is that line right there in yellow. Again, pressure altitude, set your altimeter to 299 or 2, and it shows you what your pressure altitude is wherever you are, on the field, in the air, wherever. And now to find density altitude, once you hit that line for your pressure altitude, you go to the left. And for this one, the density altitude is 9,300 feet. So it didn't change that much at this temperature. At different temperatures, it will change a lot more. Anyway, you have the chart there. It's in the maintenance manual. Back to the maintenance manual. With a torque setting corresponding to the pitch stop chart, perform flight. What does that mean? So that means have the pilot fly straight and level, pull power until he hits the pitch stop, the beginning of the pitch stop spring. So N2, record on the VEMD status page, what is the N2? And what they say here is it's supposed to be 103.4 plus 4. I'm sorry, 103.4 plus 0.4. What do we have right here? 103.2. That means we're a little bit low. It was fluctuating, but it seemed to be 103.2 for this aircraft. All right, so let's go back to the maintenance manual, scroll down a little bit. I mean, we're going to the next line, but we're just scrolling down so we can get the screenshot. If required, N2 of both engines, engine 1 and engine 2 on VEMD status page, they want you to adjust to 103.8 as close as possible using the N2 adjustment potentiometer in the overhead panel. Okay, and we were just a little bit low. They want us to bring it to as close to 103.8 as we can. All right. For a screwdriver up there in the N2 adjustment, we're going to click it to the right. We're going to hold it 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to go back to neutral. Well, we're going to do that a couple times if we need to. Okay. You go to the right, hold it for 3 seconds, go back to neutral, let it stabilize. It's going to fluctuate around, like I said, but if you can get it to as close to 103.8, and this one seemed to bounce around between 103.6 to 103.8 while we were doing this job. So I'd call that good at this point. Okay, back to the maintenance manual. This section's, it's a note, but it doesn't say a note, but it's written kind of, it's 3 sentences, but they're backwards. They're not in order. So I'm going to read it to you the way it should be. If the N2 of both engines has been adjusted at density altitude greater than 9,500 feet, check the adjustment in the hover flight. If in the final hover flight, the N2 is less than 99.9%, perform troubleshooting for the engine controls. Gives you a chapter and reference. An N2 bigger than 99.9% or less than 100.4% of both engines is to be left as is. And then it says in parentheses, adjustment in high altitude has priority before adjustment at low altitude. Anyway, just make sure it falls within that range when you come back for the hover, 99.9 to 100.4. What's it say next? After final N2 adjustment and after landing, secure the N2 adjustment potentiometer in the overhead panel with red securing varnish. That's right here. Well, that one has blue. God forbid. N2 trim values, well, I want you to record it. So the N2 trim values are not what we were talking about. The N2 trim values are on your status page. They're right there. So that's how, I don't know if that, yeah, that's in the FADEC, and that's you adjusting that potentiometer, tweaks it, and it changes that number. So it might be a good idea to write it down on this sheet like they're asking you to do, and just keep this sheet on file somewhere. All right. And that's it for the N2 adjustment. So we're going to go back to while we were in flight at 9,500 feet. Okay. At 9,500 feet, after we adjusted the N2, the next thing we're going to do is the pitch stop adjustment, which is the next paragraph of this maintenance manual section, okay? It's H4. Some notes before you start, though. You're going to need to know these things and go through it before you start this entire process, right? Note, they want the weight of the helicopter to be 2,300 kilograms plus or minus 200 kilograms. They want to make sure you have the tracking reflectors removed from the blades. I haven't used the tracking reflectors for a very long time. I don't even know if we have those anymore. Next note, the pitch stop check is mandatory, but if environmental conditions do not allow the verification of the pitch stop, the helicopter is allowed to continue operating under the following conditions. The maximum altitude of 9,500 feet shall not be exceeded with airspeed V greater than Vy. We'll talk about that in a second, okay? The pitch stop check is to be performed as soon as the required environmental conditions are obtained. A V greater than Vy. Okay, well, Vy is your max climb rate, and it's 65 knots for this aircraft. It says right here, the max altitude of 9,500 feet shall not be exceeded with an airspeed greater than 65 knots. Okay, I don't think anybody is flying above 9,500 feet to begin with, but it doesn't matter. If it's cloudy, it gives you options. There's multiple checks here that you could do, or multiple altitudes that you could do this inspection. It says right here, 9,500 feet preferred, the 5,000 feet not preferred, and the 2,000 feet. So if it's cloudy at high altitudes and you can't do 9,500 feet, go ahead and do it at 5,000 feet. The chart is just a little bit different, all right? But you could still hit the pitch stop. All right, this next note is important, all right? It says for low outside air temperatures, it may be necessary to exceed the torque limitations of 69% torque to be able to check the pitch stop setting. In this case, only straight and level flight, no maneuvers is permitted. The corresponding over torque occurrence does not require maintenance action. Let me say that one more time. If it's really cold outside, you can exceed 69% torque. And at that point, the corresponding over torque occurrence does not require maintenance actions. That's good to know. The next one is a caution, and it says, in all caps, never exceed the top limits. All right, now we're going to go down a rabbit hole. What the hell does that mean? What are the top limits? I don't know. We're going to have to figure that out. Are they talking about the top limits of the transmission on this chart here, the 9,500 pitch stop chart? I don't think so, because that's at 69%. They just said we can exceed that. So let's see what else they're talking about. So if we look at the VEMD on the fly page, there's that red bar. What is that red bar? What's the value of that? Do not exceed. Well, let's go into the flight manual to figure that out. So if we go down into the flight manual, all engines operating, takeoff power, what does it say? V less than or equal to Vy. It says it's the number 10 setting on the fly page, the one we just looked at. And since the white square is next to the torque, that's showing you that that's the torque on the fly page, okay? So if we zoom in, the maximum torque on the transmission for both engines at this max continuous power is 78%. It says it right there, okay? The maximum N1 is 98.7, and the maximum N2 is 104, all right? Now we know what our top limits are, so do not exceed your top limits. Good. You had to dig that out and figure out what that meant. If you just said, hey, let's just go fly it, and it's really cold out or really, really hot out or something, you might exceed the transmission or the engines, and then you're in trouble, okay? All right, back to the manual. So this is how we do this. Have your pilot go to 9,500 feet pressure altitude before he was at the density altitude, which might have been different. So set your altimeter to 299 or 2, have the pilot fly to 9,500 feet, and then look at the OAT. And then you pull up your chart, 9,500 feet, pitch stop adjustment check. You draw a line on your temperature. We were at -1 Celsius. So -1 Celsius. So we draw a line from -1 just straight up and down. And where it intersects with that pitch setting curve line of the chart, we draw a line horizontally on that, right where it intersects. And then on the left side, that is where the nominal torque setting is for the pitch stop in our current conditions with our current temperature, and that's what Airbus wants us to fly this thing at. It wants it to be set at. Of course, it has plus or minus 2.5. We'll go over that later. So the nominal torque value for this example is 63.6%, right? Well, after that, you're going to want to have your pilot just start pulling in power, nice and easy, until he reaches the start of the stop. He reaches the stop. Its stop is kind of spring-loaded. Here's an example of it when I had the grinders on. At the point where the collective reaches the stop, you look at the torque. And for this example, it's 67.5, and then you write it down, right? All right, so if we go back and we just look at the maintenance manual, because we're in the middle of doing this, there's a note: the maximum level speed for the helicopter on the pitch stop depends on the outside air temperature. That's pilot stuff. Just make sure he knows about that. Like if it's super cold or super hot, he may go too fast. So they want you to write down the OAT. They want you to write down the indicated airspeed. There's your indicated airspeed right there. Looks like 110 knots. I don't know why they want you to write that down. Anyway, check of the pitch stop adjustment. Indicated torque value, the one that we just went over. What was it? 67.5? Yeah. Write that down. Write down your nominal, and then figure out what the difference is. For this case, we are high. We're 3.9% higher than we should be. The indicated torque value must correspond with the rated torque value, which is torque nom, which is what we figured out on the chart. If not, correct the pitch stop adjustment according to 67.12.005-2. All right. So now at this point, we're going to go land the helicopter. And we're going to adjust it because this one's off. We go to this chapter we just talked about. We'll go to the adjustment of the collective stop, collective controls, AMM 67.12.005-2. So it says to remove the collective stop, if the indicated torque value exceeds the nominal value by more than 2.5, calculate the required shims. And what it says here is a shim thickness of 0.006 of an inch, which is 0.15 millimeters, reduces the torque value by 1%. So if you increase the shim, it lowers the torque value. All right. Since this one was off by 3.9%, we need to lower it by pretty much 4%. Anyway, that's the picture of the shim. That's the part number. If you go into the maintenance manual for installing and removing the collective spring, like they tell you to do, that's the shim right there. That right there, they call it a sheet. You don't need to order that. I don't know if it's bonded to the aircraft or not, or if that's going to come apart when you pull the whole thing off. But what that does is that takes up the space between the frame right here. I don't know what frame that is. Like a bulkhead frame. And above that, that's the floor. That's the front of the floor. So this collective spring is bolted to the floor, but it's halfway across that flange of that bulkhead or whatever. So anyway, that sheet takes up that area. So this is the spring. And just a quick review of how this actually works, okay? When you pull up on the collective shaft rotates right here, and the arm that is welded onto the collective shaft rotates with it. And when you keep pulling more and more power, it eventually contacts that spring right there of the stop. That's spring loaded. So once it hits it, it has a little bit further to go, and then it hits the stop. But between the pitch stop and the floor is the shim, and then that was sheet that we're talking about before, okay? No big deal. So anyway, you pull the pitch stop off, you change the thickness of the shim washer, you put it back up there, and you do the entire flight again. In my experience, what it says is usually right on. You know, so if you change one shim or whatever, one thickness, 0.006 of an inch, it will be 1%. Okay, so that's it for the N2 and the pitch stop adjustment check. So just to review real quick, why do we have to do this check? Because on the periodical inspection, which is the 1,000-hour, 36-month inspection, you are required to do a ground run and functional check flight. Part of that ground run and functional check flight is to do the pitch stop adjustment check and the N2 adjustment check. That's why we do it. Also, if you replace the entire engine, or if you replace the digital control unit, the EEC, you are required to do these checks as well. There's also a couple other reasons why you would do these checks. They're on the matrix. You'll have to look at that, okay? So in a hover, you set the N2 to 100.0. You go for a flight. at 60 knots, max continuous power, all the way up to 9,500 feet density altitude. And you check it at altitude. And if it's 103.4 plus 0.4, you're good. If not, they want you to adjust it to 103.8. Then after that, they want you to do the pitch stop check, which is have your pilot fly to 9,500 feet at pressure altitude, which is 29902. Straight and level, keep pulling power until you hit the stop. You check the torque that you have on the screen, you match it up with the chart, and see if there's a difference. And if it's within the range, which is plus or minus 2.5%, which is a pretty good range, that's a 5% range, then you're good. But this one wasn't, so we tweaked it, and after that, we were dead nuts on. But wait, there's more. Oh man, down the rabbit hole we go. Okay, like I said before, there's another requirement. It's just for the check. What we just went through is 0560006-8, and this was the set and adjustment. Chapter 6-7 is just the check. So it's a little bit different. We're going to go over that real fast, all right? Just real fast. I know you guys are tired of this crap. Take a deep breath, go get some water. I don't know. But anyway, if we go to supplemental inspections, MSM 052500, click on that button right there, brings up 0560 ground run and functional check. Well, what do they want you to do? They want you to check the N2 and pitch stop. And they give the reference that we just said, 6-7, which is just the check. And that's a 1,000-hour, 36-month inspection. So that is actually where you find it. So if you find any problems, then they reference you. Well, let's just click the blue hyperlink, go to 6-7 real fast, and look at the differences. So the first difference I see is the check in the hover, the check of the N2 in the hover. They want you to check to make sure it's between 99.9 and 100.4 of the N2. It says if it's not inside the limits, then do the set and adjustment of the N2 and pitch stop to referencing chapter 6-8, which is everything we've already gone through, okay? All right, this other part is a little bit different and it's way better. It's one of the notes in 6-8, but here it's also a note, but they clarify it a little bit more, which is nice. And this is under check of the N2 in or above 9,500 feet density altitude. And it says, if weather conditions do not allow for the test to be carried out, the aircraft is to be limited to 5,000 feet until such time as the check of 9,500 feet can be carried out. Okay, cool. That's good. And the only other thing that's different here is if you're doing the pitch stop check, it shows the indicated torque value must correspond to the rated torque value, which is torque nominal plus or minus 2.5%. That's the same in the other one. Well, if it's not, correct the pitch stop adjustment according to 67120052, which is the chapter we looked at for adjusting the pitch stop. All right. Other than that, everything's the same, but it references the check, so you wouldn't have to tweak the ground hover if you're going to do this check on your. Technically, it's on your periodical, but if you click on the periodical, this isn't on there. This is only on the supplemental checks, which is 1,000-hour, 36 months, but it aligns with your 1,000-hour, 36-month periodical. All right. So I don't know how your company tracks it. Just remember that doing the check is easier than doing the set and adjustment. All right. Just, I mean, it's basically the same. It references the check. It references the set and adjustment if it's out of the normal settings. All right. Cool. All right. That's it. And just, I know this is a lot, and I know I said a crap load of stuff, and I know I talk fast. You could slow it down. You can go through this video. This video's out here so that you guys can have a review. Because to be honest, it took me years to actually wrap my head around it, because talking to different people, everybody does this check differently. And I think, man, I don't know if that's right or not. I even tried to talk. Anyway, I won't go there. The point is, I'm 99% sure this is how you do this check. If I'm wrong, please let me know so that we could square this video away. A lot of guys try to not do this check. It's got bad weather and it gets overlooked or whatever. And now it's not on the functional check flight chapter of the AMM. They moved it. Like, it all used to be under the functional check flight, ground run and functional check flight. It used to have like 10 more pages. Anyway, they took it out of there and they put it in its own chapter. So I think for some time people it wasn't being done because people would print out the ground run and functional check flight according to their company's inspection, and they wouldn't see it in there because the company hadn't put it in their periodical form yet, but our company's got it in there now, so no worries. Anyway, I know this video is long, and your guys' eyes are probably glazed over. Sorry about that. Did the best I could on this one. Let me know if I screwed anything up, and I really appreciate you guys tuning into this channel. And I hope you found value in this video. And if you did, just share it with other guys who work on this machine, okay? Look, I could have used a video like this myself like 15 years ago. It would have been very helpful. So much time goes by between when you do this check. If you're just at a base with one helicopter, you'll forget how to do it. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you know of anybody out there who works on these machines and they could use this video to help them out, just share the link if you could. Much appreciated. Again, I truly appreciate you guys watching the videos. And I'll see you guys next time. All right, later.